Justin Tomlinson.
It's a real pleasure to serve under your chairmanship, and it's a pleasure to follow the honourable member for Wolverhampton South West. Very many happy memories as a child visiting Wolverhampton, and I'll pay tribute to the honourable member for Glasgow East, who has demonstrated his real, genuine passion in this very, very important subject, and he is clearly representing his constituents in a very strong way. And it's a recognition of the importance of how well attended this debate is, particularly with other things going on in the main chamber. And it is because there is a real opportunity to influence what the government is doing here. Following the Green Paper, the government has demonstrated that it is willing to listen, to engage, to consult, and to make changes. And we have a new minister in place who is widely respected and is determined to be accessible, to listen, to learn, and to improve the situation. And this is not a new thing. The Work Capability Assessment was brought in 2008. It's had 5 independent reviews, over 100 recommendations made, over 100 recommendations enacted. Almost weekly, the government is looking at ways to make further changes, and each and every one of us, through our experiences, through casework, through going to sit through work capability assessments, are able to feed in and are able to make those changes. And I know, as a former disabilities minister, the work capability assessment wasn't in my remit, but I made representations on behalf of many of the groups, the Parkinson's, MS Therapy Group, many of the ones that have already been mentioned today, and Mind. And I did find that the policymakers and the experts were willing to listen. They were willing to change the scripts, the way that questions are being asked, the way that they identify things, in particular where there are fluctuating health conditions, where those health conditions are less common. So an assessor doesn't regularly come along those. And we have come along in leaps and bounds. Now, clearly, with the examples that are given by the earlier speakers, and I presume with speakers who will follow me, there are examples where the system isn't still right. And that is why it's so important to have a minister so keen to engage. And I just would, a couple of broad points, then I have some asked myself. Many people say, well, why do we have assessments? And I wondered that. When I arrived as a minister, I thought, you know, I could save the government a fortune. We could do away with assessments. They are expensive. The Treasury, George Osborne was very keen for us to find savings. I thought this is a bit of an easy win, this. But the reality, and we saw this as we transferred from DLA to PIP, that the assessments, ignoring the cases where they've gone wrong, are there to help build the case. So under DLA, where it was a pure paper form written document, most of us here would have articulated the challenges that we faced in our everyday life pretty well. And we probably almost certainly would have got the benefits that we were entitled to. But for many people navigating the system, they weren't able to do that for a variety of reasons. And only 16% of claimants under DLA access the highest rate of benefit. Under PIP, it's now 26%. And that is because in some parts, the assessment has helped build their case, particularly for those with deteriorating health conditions at the beginning of that journey, where they're able to assess and say, well, okay, at the moment, your day-to-day life isn't too affected, but it is likely to be, and likely to be before too long. And so the system would trigger that ability to reassess, and in the majority of cases to see that benefit and support increased. So the principle of the assessments is a good thing, and that is why the then Labour government brought it in 2008. It's not some concerted ideology, it is done to assist people. Now, where the assessments go wrong, there is a problem, and that's why it is absolutely right to have this debate and help shape and engage the future going forward. Yes.
I thank the former Minister for giving way, and I have to say, when he was a Minister, he was very constructive, and we had a very constructive relationship around the debating points that we were making. Does he accept that one of the problems with the assessments is that they assess people on their best days, yes, and take an assumption of what their best days look like, not what their worst days are, and perhaps if there was a change in assumption, then that might help?
I thank the honourable member, and in particular for the very kind words, and it was always a pleasure working with him, and he's certainly one of my favourite opposition MPs in the way he engages and shapes things. There you go. That might not help you in Scotland. But absolutely, no, the theory is, if the assessments are done correctly, it is what is meant to be a judgment over a period of time. It shouldn't be that isolated moment that you are in the assessment. The assessment is meant to take a judgment of what is your typical challenges that you would have to overcome over a period of time. So that is an important point to make, but the system should be recognising that. Now, the first concern, rightly, that people raise is why are the appeal rates so high? If they are so high, there must be a fundamental problem. Now, actually, if you drill down, the vast majority of successful appeals are where there is late additional evidence, either orally or written, provided. Now, to me, the solution to that is that we must do more to access people's health records in advance. Now, before data protection people come down on me with a ton of bricks, it can be a voluntary thing, but I think it should be a given. If the person applying... Yes.
There is one answer to this, one solution to this, and that is that if right at the beginning consultants' records were considered rather than doctors, because I appreciate the challenges around GPs, but if a consultant actually was able to say that Mr. A or Mrs. B was not capable of doing X, Y, Z because of their impairment, would that be acceptable? Because it would make life a lot easier and would deal with some of the anxieties that some GPs feel that they could be intimidated into agreeing such and such a position.
Very important intervention. Actually, it is already taken into consideration, but there were some other things you said I'm just about to come on to which actually help strengthen that. So just to say on these high appeal rates, so if we could get permission, automatically access those health records, because far too many people going through the system only realised they needed those pieces of supporting evidence after they failed, and in the helpful, this is why you haven't accessed those particular level of benefits. And that is just an inefficient way of doing it. And I think we should be more proactive. We've started to see that, but we should be a real emphasis on this. I agree with my honourable friend about recording sessions. I think that should be a given. That would help deal with questions asked in the appeals. There should be more videos setting out what's going on to deal with the anxiety so people actually can see what's coming forward. And one of the successes under the PIP assessments is they go out of their way now to encourage you to bring a colleague, a friend, a family member to support you during that. The same principle should apply. And also, a lot of MPs, understandably, get work capability assessment and PIP assessments mixed up because they are so similar. Actually, that's just a really good idea that perhaps we should be doing those a lot more closely aligned, and I know the government is looking at it. And just my final part of the contribution is, once we've got the work capability assessment right, that's only part of the journey. Because the idea is that assessment is about to identify what support people need and how we can help them go forward. And Mine themselves said the government should have a real emphasis on removing the real-world barriers to work. That's why I said at the beginning of my remarks that this was an opportunity. With 3 million new jobs created and 776,000 vacancies available, which is a record high. Yes.
Thank you. Before you finished, I just wanted, in your early part of your statement, you talked about it shouldn't go wrong and that line. My problem is that one of my constituents lost over £300 after she had to cancel an appointment because of urgent ill health. For now, 4 months, she's not been able to resolve this. So it's okay saying, well, when it goes wrong, but when it does actually go wrong, the system isn't there. So what action can be taken to ensure that the work capability assessment system is responsive to applicants and considers their concerns, especially when it goes wrong?
Yeah. And we'd all agree, none of us ever want it to go wrong, ever. There's nobody would ever argue for that. 4 months isn't acceptable. I suspect that you've raised this, and our very helpful minister will be diligently making a note, and you will be contacted shortly on that particular case. But just on to my final points about, the point is, the majority of those people now out of work have been away from work for a very long time. They are desperate for an opportunity. And as part of that assessment, you are looking at what they can do. And they are, over 50% of those are going to have a health condition, which will make it harder than for the majority of people seeking for work. And so the system, once identifying the support in terms of financial benefits, also needs to embrace the principle of the tailored support that is at the core of universal credit. And we have to look at matching what they can do. And for some people that may be an hour a week. Some people it may be that with their fluctuating health condition that they're fine for months, and then they might have to dip in and dip back out of work to make sure that support is provided to the individual person, coordinated by their named job coach, looking at the issues to do with health, their confidence and their skills. And the government has to get smarter at talking to employers, particularly small and medium-sized employers who create 45% of jobs in this country. Because the big organisations, big businesses, are pretty good. They've got HR departments. They are good at dealing with this on the whole. But small and medium-sized businesses without HR departments and without personnel departments, they need more support. I'm being reminded to be quick, I will be. And so I would encourage the government to not lose sight of creating those opportunities for people. I'm encouraged the government is making improvements, and each and every one of us can help shape those.